the Rivals devs have actually revealed how they implement new heroes into the game. Now, this is awesome information because from this, we can sort of work out what they're going to do with future heroes coming to the game. Now, of course, we know the Thing and the Human Torch are imminent. They will be announced very soon, I am sure, and we're going to get to see them and play them, and it's going to be awesome. But you guys might remember, there's actually been a ton of heroes that have been leaked in the game files that data miners have been finding. I've covered them as well, like things like loads of X-Men heroes, characters like Blade, like Ultron, all these characters. There's literally tons and tons of characters. And we kind of thought, yeah, maybe some of them are real, maybe some of them ain't. There was a lot of news going around saying, oh, maybe these have just been planted by the devs to kind of throw off everybody. Well, the devs have actually responded, and they've given an interview to IGN, and they explain everything, and this is super cool. But the TLDR of this, their approach to adding new heroes into the game, is essentially this. They look at what type of character and what skill set that character needs to come out to balance the game right now. So I think that just means in terms of, you know, like a kit that would fit into the current game at the moment. Then they come up with a list of possible characters, obviously from the Marvel Universe. Then they go to Marvel Games and Marvel Studios and say, guys, we want to add these characters. What do you think? They give them the yes or the no based on whatever they're doing with the IP. Then they go away and they work on some internal designs for the heroes. They work on their tool, their skill set. They work on their, you know, visual design, all of that stuff. Then they look at the community and see what excitement is going on within the wider Marvel community. So things like new movie launches, maybe new comics, maybe new TV series, and see if they can fit things in with that. And then they basically decide who they're going to add following on from that. So you can see that this has led to the Invisible 4. I've been playing a lot of Invisible Woman. She's got me to GM, so I'm not going to complain. But a lot of the Fantastic Four makes sense because the new Fantastic Four movie is fairly close to coming out, and obviously we had the big trailer for that movie as well, so it all makes sense. So yeah, and also I suppose not looking at newer hero launches, but you can look at the new Captain America film. There's some sort of cosmetics in the game for that as well, which you can buy. Obviously, it's not a new hero. But let's jump over to the interview from IGN because this is great. I love this kind of stuff from developers. So let's just break it all down. So essentially, last month, data miners were sharing a lot of info about potential future heroes that could come to the game. I covered these, like I said, loads of X-Men heroes. You got Blade, you got Ultron, loads of stuff. The question is, are they fake or are they real? Well, the interviewer at IGN actually put this question to the game producer on Rivals and also the executive producer, who's known as Danny Koo, and to see what the hell was going on. Are they trolling the player base? What's going on? And this is what they say. So firstly, we want to say that we don't recommend anybody to make adjustments to the files of the game. Also, you can see that for each character's design, actually, we come through a very complicated process and we make a lot of concepts, trials, prototypes, development, etc. So there could be some information left in the code, and it might mean that we have tried those directions and they may appear or may not appear in our future plans. And whether or not they will appear in our future pipeline is highly depending on what kind of gameplay experience our players would expect in the game. Koo then goes on to say, if I could have a 10-year plan, it'd be great. But the team's experimented with a lot of playstyles, heroes. It's like there's someone doing scratch paperwork and then just left a notebook there. And someone, a data miner, decided to open it with no context. The interview then says, I pushed a little, asking them point blank if they were deliberately trolling people. And Koo replied, no, we would rather spend our time developing the actual game. So, I mean, that could be trolling, right? That could be memes. It's like, no, whatever. None of it's all just whatever. We've been developing the game. We add stuff into the game. It doesn't work. Then we decide to go in a different direction. We just leave the remnants in the files. It's not really worth cleaning it up. We don't really care. That could be true. Or it could be the case of they are doing it deliberately to maybe try and control the narrative when new hero launches come out. But I don't really think it's worth their time, to be honest. So I'd have to agree with the devs here. I actually think, given what I've seen over the years with the way these live service games get developed, there is remnants of all kinds of stuff. Now, I will use Overwatch as a little bit of an example, but Overwatch, I don't know whether people are aware of this. It kind of, I don't know whether it has it right now, because I'm not sure, because I've not been too active in the community, let's say. But in the past, there was a very thriving data mining scene in that game. And a lot of things were data mined in advance. Now, the developers could either go down the route of an arms race with the data miners and basically say, like, no, you should not be data mining our stuff, so we're going to keep changing file encryption and all kinds of stuff. Or, which is the way that the Overwatch developers went for a while, I'm not sure if they're doing this now or whatever, but they basically made a truce with the data miners and said, look, we're not going to do this, but we know you guys are looking into the files, but please don't just leak everything. And it kind of worked, right? Although obviously this meant there were people out there that may have had a lot of information on upcoming content miles in advance, and sometimes the context of it didn't make any sense. I suppose to use one very relevant example at the moment is the Stadium game feature for Overwatch. A lot of the like audio cues and the voice files and like the things in the game which relate to that mode have been in the game for years. Now, they could have been a different mode or something else going on at the time. You don't know because you don't have the context. But yeah, it's interesting seeing that as a game mode now, considering what was in the files for quite a long time. But anyway, yeah, I digress. So I think this is basically... I think this is just game development, right? They're trying different things. They've got different bits of info in the files that are maybe used for different types of heroes or different directions they wanted to go in. And basically, they're not trying to troll anyone. They're just working on the game, which I think is a fair answer. IGN then goes on to say, in the same conversation, we also discussed how a character gets chosen to be added into Marevel Rivals in the first place. The two told me that the team plans on updating roughly a year in advance and is committed to keeping its current pace of adding new characters every month and a half. For each update, NetEase looks at what type of character and skill set is needed to balance out the rest of the game and add variety to the roster, and come up with a list of several different possible additions. Wu told me that part of NetEase's strategy for achieving game balance is to focus less on aggressively tweaking existing characters to be perfectly fine-tuned, and more on adding new characters and experiences to keep things fresh. Fill gaps, support characters that are a bit weak with new team-up abilities, or counter characters that might have been a little bit too strong. Once they've got a list of possibilities, NetEase then takes these suggestions to Marevel Games and begin working on the initial designs. From there, they look at what the community is currently excited about, as well as what's planned a year in advance in other Marvel divisions, such as if a big film or comic arc is coming out that they can tie a character in with. That helps them come to a final decision on who's going in. All this explains why there might be a lot of different heroes listed in the code. NetEase just has a lot of ideas it's tossing around all of the time. So I don't know about you guys, but I find that really interesting. So I think on the face of it, a lot of this makes sense. You are going to launch heroes when you've got a big, major Marvel movie coming out, because it's almost like the perfect advertising vehicle for your game, because you can be like, oh, look, there's a new, I don't know, let's say a new Thor movie is coming out. Let's add a Thor-adjacent character into the game. Let's add, I don't know, let's put Jane into the game, right? Or something. Although, is she dead or that? I don't think she is dead, right? She turned into like gold mist thing. She died like a god. I don't know if she's dead or what, but let's add her into the game, right? Because the new Thor movie is coming out. It makes sense, right? Because it's like a marketing vehicle for your game. It's almost like a leveling up of the animated shorts again from Overwatch, but this time you've got an entire, like, hundreds of millions of dollars movie behind your game to advertise your new characters. So it does make sense. I think, though, the main interesting point here is the way they're looking at adding the characters is straight up. They look at what is going on in the game at the moment, and they are looking at balance. They do admit that balance in a game like this is not going to be completely possible. And even, like, again, to use Overwatch as an example, that the Overwatch devs have actually recently realized that, yeah, it's you can't really balance a game. So we need to take more risks. So what we're going to do is just add perks into the game and make the game, kind of mess it up more. And I think the Rivals devs are saying, like, look, yeah, we want balance, but we're not going to chase, like, minor balance. We're not going to make all these, like, little stat changes all over the place, because it doesn't really make any sense. Instead, our balance is to just keep freshening up the experience. And that's mainly with new heroes. Yeah, it's with new team-up abilities as well, but it's mainly with new heroes that just throws a spanner into the works. Then it's like, okay, what are we going to do now? Look at what's happened in Season 1. Look how good Invisible Woman is. And I tell you what, Mr. Fantastic is getting used more and more now. I think he finds it hard to maybe secure eliminations, but he's basically a tank. And a lot of people don't really know how to deal with him, because you don't see him that often. And he's pretty good as well with the Invisible Woman team-up. So, yeah. And who knows what's going to happen when the Thing and the Human Torch get added, essentially in like a week or so's time. That's going to be insane. That's going to shake the meta up again. And I think this is the way that they're definitely balancing the game. We could go into a massive discussion on what's happening with the future balance and the future meta of the game. But I think what they've realized is if you keep adding major content to the game, which is essentially new heroes, and you add them fast, then what that does is it keeps shaking the game up. Now, there could be a negative to this. You could add a hero that just doesn't do anything and it isn't really playable. People don't want to play the hero, and it's not going to have much of a meta impact. I suppose, again, to use a recent example, look at Mr. Fantastic. You could say that, okay, good old Reed, he's not that stupidly OP straight away. Well, it's not OP, but he's not that effective straight away, so he wouldn't really have been picked up immediately. Whereas Invisible Woman, she was definitely picked up basically on day one because of the value she brings to the team. So if she was as good as him, or had the same sort of, I don't want to say as good as him, but had the same sort of initial impact, there might be 2 limp heroes there added to the game. And I feel like the danger with this is they could very quickly go off that, oh, that's a bad hero, we've got another bad hero, then we've got another one sort of thing. But I do think adding heroes is definitely a very strong way of shaking up the game, but then also adding new team-up abilities, because remember, every season they're going to change the team-up abilities. You don't know if they're going to do it for the half-season point, or if it's just going to be a seasonal thing. We might do, actually. I can't remember off the top of my head. But basically, every season there should be different team-up abilities, and they can add new ones as well. So that could shake the game up in the future as well. So I do think they've got a lot of levers they can pull, and they can keep the game fresh. But that's basically how they decide what heroes to add to the game, guys. I find this all interesting. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed that, remember, do all the YouTube stuff, like the video, sub to the channel, all that good stuff. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next video. See you soon.